Okay, Helen, thank you.
All right, good. All right. Welcome to Livermore Indivisible's January general meeting, and Happy New Year to everyone. This month, we are fortunate enough to host a forum featuring the three candidates for Alameda County Sheriff: Joanne Walker, Gregory Ahern, and Yesenia Sanchez. Before we begin, we'd like to thank the Independent, Livermore Vine, Pleasant Weekly, and Indivisible East Bay for their sponsorship. And many thanks to those who submitted questions for our candidates. The format of the forum. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves, their background, qualifications for the position. They will then be given 2 minutes to respond to the same question generated from those we have received. For the candidates, the timer, when it appears, will change color when you have 30 seconds left. So there it is. So be respectful of your time and the other candidates. All non-participants will be muted. At the end of this session, questions from the Q&A portion of your screen will be selected. Please add your questions to this section and address them to all candidates. No individual or personal questions will be asked. The forum will end with a 2-minute closing statement from each candidate. If you want to revisit it, the forum is being recorded and can be viewed on YouTube after we're finished. Okay, welcome everyone. I'm glad we all got our technical difficulties straightened out. So, Ms. Walker, if you would start with, you'll have 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Okay, well, hello and thank you all for having the forum and inviting me. I appreciate it. Before I get started, I would like to send my condolences to the Nguyen family for the loss of their son, grandson, and family member. And I would also like to send my condolences out to the officers and the command staff over at Alameda County Sheriff's Department as they struggle to make some sense of what happened here. So in order to give you a little bit more of me, I would like you to know that my name is Joanne Walker and that I've been a resident in Alameda County for over 40 plus years. I graduated from California State East Bay, and I've been a teacher there for over 27 years. I have been a law enforcement officer for 26 years, and I was able to use the information and my degree at the department to make things better. And why? It's because if you take care of law enforcement people, the theory is that they will be better and do better when it's time to help others. And so that's what I did with my career. I introduced the book, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement and Their Families, because it's important that families understand what their loved ones are going through in order to help their loved one to remain balanced. That helped to change the culture. The other thing is I am driven to become the next sheriff of Alameda County because I'd like to bring back balanced leadership and trust into that department. And I say that because we cannot solve problems if the community does not trust us. If they think that we are not doing our job, then they are very, very, very stubborn about helping the police. And oftentimes they definitely will not help the sheriff's department. The other reason why I came in is because I would like to, or at least why I'm running, is that I would like to take care of some of the problems that exist in Santa Rita Jail. Every time I walk the streets here in Alameda County, that is the first thing that people want to know about. How are you going to change things? Because they just can't stand it any longer. The other reason why I came in is because I happen to be someone who, due to a violent crime, a member of my family was affected, and it changed the trajectory of our entire family. I understand the importance of the help from the highway patrol, medical staff, police, those three, and fire. And those three professions haven't always been very good to African-American people, but they were wonderful to me and my family. And I would like to be able to repay the the favor by doing that and being that to other families who are suffering. Because of those men and women who came into our lives, I am right here today because they supported me and kept telling me that I could do it, that I was worth it, that I am important, and they needed me to do the best and to be the best I could possibly do and be. I know that I can encourage others to do the same. And if I'm elected to become the sheriff of Alameda County, I will make sure that that's one of the things that's high on my agenda of things to do. Supporting people, training, understanding, knowing what policies and procedures are appropriate and what are not is very important for a sheriff. And a sheriff is the one who sets the tone for the members of the community and for the members that are working for them inside of the sheriff's department, the jails especially, the courts. Anytime we go out and we're dealing with the unincorporated areas, we are the police there. So we need to be knowledgeable, we need to be trained, there needs to be supervision that is appropriate, and we need to follow appropriate policies and procedures.
Okay, thank you. And I was actually timing you, and you came in under time. Our timer is still there, just not working too well. Ms. Sanchez.
Unmute myself. Well, thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your interest in this upcoming sheriff's race, and thank you to Livermore Indivisible and sponsors for hosting this event. I am Yesenia Sanchez and I am your next sheriff. A little background on me. I was born and attended schools in Hayward. My father immigrated from Mexico to California, Oakland, California in 1965. My mother's from Texas originally, but came to Oakland, California at the age of 6, and I am currently a happy Livermore resident. In my youth, I experienced difficult struggles, a broken home, financial hardship. I started my career in the sheriff's office at the age of 19. Before being hired onto the sheriff's office, I struggled with 3 jobs. I worked at a used car lot in San Leandro during the week. I was working at the Oakland airport for Federal Express during my evenings. And on the weekends, I was working at McDonald's as a shift manager. So at that time, I was living paycheck to paycheck. My belongings and all of my personal valued belongings were stored safely in my car, as well as my clothing. I never thought that I would have a career in law enforcement. I never thought that law enforcement had a place for me. So when I began working at the sheriff's office, I saw good people doing good work, and I wanted to be a part of that effort. So here I am. Through hard work and determination, I've risen through the ranks from starting off as a civilian to a deputy and to now a division commander. So now I'm a 25-year veteran of the sheriff's office, the highest ranking Latin female. I took over management of Santa Rita Jail in April of 2020 at the height of the pandemic, right when it peaked. And Santa Rita Jail is the largest duty station that we have. It encompasses the largest number of staff that we have, over 600 employees, and a budget of over $270 million. I know that Santa Rita has had a lot of issues in recent years, and I'm committed to reshaping how we provide services in our facility. If you are looking for someone who has the passion and the drive to reform this agency, that person is me. With that, I'm very excited and proud to know and have this group be the first to hear that I've just recently been endorsed by Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf. Oakland is our largest city. I'm looking forward to working with Oakland and the cities that encompass our county. You will see during this forum that there's going to be very clear differences between us candidates. I look forward to the conversation. I look forward to the conversation as far as what my vision entails for this agency and the county. Thank you.
I was also timing you and didn't unmute myself. Mr. Ahern, Richard.
All right, thank you. I too want to thank the Independent, and the Livermore Vine, Pleasanton Weekly, and Indivisible East Bay for inviting me here today. This is a very important election, and we're engaging in some very important discussions on the issues that we face in our community. Some background on me is that I was born and raised in the city of Oakland, and I'm the youngest of 4 children. My parents also born in Oakland, for a long time residents of Alameda County as well. They instilled strong traits of community service, loyalty, compassion, and importance of helping others. I've been married to my wife, Kathleen, for the past 36 years, and we have 1 daughter that we've raised in the city of Oakland. We've been here for 30 years. My daughter Erin. I'm proud to call Alameda County our home, where I've lived and worked my entire life. Prior to law enforcement, I worked in a factory. I did construction jobs and served legal papers at my father's law practice. As your sheriff since 2007, my mission has been clear. I focus on public protection. I work to protect the public, strengthen relationships within the community, help prevent people from turning to crime through 4 guiding principles. They are prevention, enforcement, programs, and service. Since 1980, I've worked in the front lines of law enforcement and rose through the ranks to become your sheriff. I'm most grateful for the courageous men and women of Alameda County Sheriff's Office for the important work they do each and every day as they put on their uniform to serve and protect our community during these most difficult times. I'm truly honored to work alongside these courageous, outstanding people. We have faced many challenges together this past several years that include issues related to COVID-19, several natural and human-caused disasters, record wildfires, civil unrest, and some anti-law enforcement sentiment, as well as crime. Despite all of these challenges we face, my staff has never wavered in their strong commitment to the community. With a greater demand for additional sworn staff, I'm dedicated to recruiting and hiring and promoting the most diverse, talented, and compassionate people. To that end, I have created a career pathway for young men and women to enter a career in law enforcement while they further their education. This pathway includes Explorer program of high school age students and high school graduates for our cadet program, along with the job entries for new employees. I'm also very proud of the compassion, ingenuity, technology, and efficiency I've brought to this agency. The work we've done through our Youth and Family Services Bureau has changed lives.
30
We've
seconds.
used state-of-the-art technology to reduce deadly law enforcement encounters by leading the area in escalation using specifically trained personnel and very sophisticated tools. And we're committed to showing compassion to those in our community who suffer from mental health, addiction, and homelessness. I am the most qualified and experienced candidate for sheriff. I have been a leader at the national, state, and local level. I've been tested under most difficult circumstances, and there's never been a more critical time to have a proven law enforcement leader. So thank you.
3 minutes. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So our first question goes to Ms. Sanchez first. What is the most difficult challenge you have faced in your law enforcement career, and what made it so challenging?
Oh my, so many challenges do occur in law enforcement, as you know. But personally, the biggest challenge for me has been the promotion to division commander in April of 2020 and taking on an assignment at the largest duty station where we had the pandemic that we were trying to navigate. So working, it's a challenge, but it's also when things like this occur, it's a blessing in disguise. Being a part of that effort that brought our public health partners together with our medical provider partners together, and having that collaboration between them, our behavioral health team, to collaborate and find the best way to develop a protocol that will address the pandemic and how we provide our PPE to not only just the jail population, but our staff, making sure that we had the best equipment for them. And that was through working with them, as well as our own Office of Emergency Services. We have fantastic staff, skilled staff who work there, and they have connections and networking and communications with people that were able to help us with logistics. So that was key in having that relationship, to have logistics brought into the jail and afford it to those who were going to be providing either services or those who were residing in the jail. So that has been the biggest challenge. It's been a blessing to have and establish those strong relationships with our partners. And we continue to speak to each other, even on the weekends and in the evenings, because as you know, this pandemic is still here and we are still trying to work through it.
30 seconds.
We definitely have a lot that we have offered. And as we experience this new variant, there are definitely measures that we need to take and enhance to stop the spread within our jail. We know that it will enter the jail. How we isolate it and treat it is really key in making sure that we protect as many people as possible.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ahern. So, oh, and by the way, before I start timing, if you need a question repeated, please ask. I know some of them are kind of complicated. Okay.
Well, the most challenging job I have as sheriff is dealing with sending our people in harm's way. As a sergeant on December 11th, 1998, I was a homicide investigator and had to work the homicide death of one of our deputies, John Monago. He's killed at the Outback Steakhouse. And having to deal with that tragedy brings the danger to our job to life, which is the importance of having the experience and qualifications to be sheriff. We were reminded just last week with the death of our David Wynn, who was killed on the freeway, and having to deal with the families, the investigation, and the trauma that goes along with that, and the number of people that are affected with those tragedies. Not only are the victims of the family dealing with that tragedy, but it strikes every aspect of that individual's life. This was dealing with the academy mates of that individual, dealing with the teachers that teach at the academy, dealing with our staff that had to go through the background recruiting of David, and then dealing with the family and the things that come after that family. We've had a number of deaths in our agency, some to COVID, which Oscar Rocha, and we want to make sure that we treat that family with respect and dignity each and every time these reminders come up. And we're reminded of those on a yearly basis where we have anniversaries. Our agency started a law enforcement memorial where we can pay tribute to those officers who have
30
given their
seconds.
lives in the line of duty. And we actually do a memorial run for those individuals as a reminder of what we need to do and how we have to protect our community and how we have to protect our own people from the tragedies that occur in law enforcement.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Walker. And you're muted.
Okay, how about now?
Great.
Okay, can we restart the time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. As a law enforcement officer, I know, and many who have been in this field prior to my coming in, we understand that there are going to be tragedies on both sides. But what is very important to me and what has been a major challenge is holding the law enforcement officers and folks who are associated with us, including the community, together when there is a crisis. My work doesn't start when there's a crisis. My work starts before there is a crisis. So my goal and the challenge has always been how to go out and engage the community before there's a critical incident, so that when there is a incident of any kind of concern, that there is still trust between law enforcement and the communities that we serve. You don't do that when a critical incident starts or happens. You do it before it happens. But afterwards or during it, or just before we have to go out and put our lives in harm's way, it is very important to keep those people who are responding with you on the right track, so they go out and they do the very best that they can do. As a peer support person and an individual who has worked for some years now, over 7 to 10, with crisis, I volunteer at crisis support in Alameda County. I have learned how to spot
30
when
seconds.
someone is in crisis. So it's very, very important that I pay attention to the people who I am with, so that when we go out, we form a team that functions highly, and we're able to go out, do our very best, and come back, debrief about it, and then go out and continue to do good work. It doesn't matter whether or not I agree with a community member. What matters to me is that I remember that I am working for the community. It is about public safety. And if I cannot encourage them and get them to understand that we are out to do our very best because you are the ones who tell us what it is that you need in this community, then I have failed as a leader. So part of being a leader is making sure that I set the tone, that I encourage others to do the same, and that when we're working as a team, that we go out and support one another so we can support the community effectively so that there can be public safety.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ahern, you're up first. Given the huge spike in gun sales and the escalation of gun violence, including suicide by gun, what are your plans to make our community safer from gun violence? Please also address ghost guns, safe storage, and red flag laws.
Well, that's a very big ask, but so the ghost guns are privately manufactured guns, and we're working with the ATF right now. We are one of 4 counties in the state of California to have received the grant to work off of the armed and prohibited individuals from possession of handguns. And our units have gone out and apprehended a number of violators, and we've seized hundreds of weapons in this past year. The gun violence in Alameda County is very tragic. Within the city of Oakland, there was 139 people that have died with gun violence this year to homicide. Most of those occurred within the city of Oakland, and we've assigned units to work in Oakland to try to reduce that number. That's a record number of homicides in that area, as well as the number of shooting victims. There's 531 victims of gun violence that were brought into Highland Hospital this year alone. So we're working to try to, one, apprehend those violators. We have identified a number of street gang and members of those street gangs where we have a gang suppression unit that specifically goes out to apprehend those violators who are doing the most violent crimes in our area. And we have a team that works with our investigations unit to try to mitigate those
30
acts
seconds.
of violence. So we have enforcement as well as other programs that go on to make sure we seize those weapons and take those people responsible for doing those violent crimes into custody.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Walker, you're next. Same
Yes.
question.
Yes, I would like to say that the enforcement of laws are already there. Assigning more investigators to work through the process so that we can figure out what we need to do in order to reduce the violence from guns is very, very important. But also I want to bring up something that people don't always talk about in law enforcement, and that is the fact that the community is afraid. The community is afraid of a lot of things that they feel are out of their control. Arresting is one way to handle the problem temporarily, but what happens in the future when the person is afraid again? One of the things that the Warriors did, I happened to participate in that because there's some students who I knew who we wanted to help with their fear factor. And the Warriors said something that was very important. They said, you know what, we're out here to play ball, but the thing that's really important is I want you guys to know one another so that when you get on the bus, you are not thinking about what you need to do to kill the person because you don't know them and you're afraid, but instead you guys shake each other's hand and you say, hey, I know you because we went to a program together. So I'm all for making sure that we connect with our community members, especially our young ones. Go in and educate them. If there are no SROs in that school, then get some officers who are the beat cops in that area so that they get to know children, not because they want to arrest them or they think that they are predators of some sort, but because they want to formulate a positive experience so that child has a different view of law enforcement, a different view of fear, a different view of what they can add to the community. And for those who are out there doing the crime, I want us to work together and make sure that we stop them the best way that we can. Arrest is only one way, but you still have to educate and you still have to give them opportunities to do better.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Sanchez.
Yeah, so I believe it's really easy to identify what the problem is. I think it's very clear what the problem is. The guns are making their way into our communities and into the hands of our youth very easily. And we have to find out how that's occurring. And although it's necessary to have enforcement and taking people to jail and taking them off the streets, we have to ensure that the residents, as well as those who come into our areas to patronize our local businesses and our small businesses, feel safe. In order to do that, we do have to go after those who are using firearms to commit crimes and harming people with those weapons. But we have to look at why this is occurring. Why is it that we have this problem where individuals out there on the street find it necessary in their minds to carry guns, whether they commit them or use them to commit crimes? But when I was on the street working patrol and I was taking guns off with young people, their common response was, I'm using it, I have it to protect myself. So I think we as a community really need to focus on why there is that mindset too. We're going to take people to jail for carrying guns, and we're going to hold them accountable. We need to work with our DA's office to make sure that we don't give a slap on the hand type of sentencing for those who are committing crimes with firearms. Those are dangerous weapons. And I think that we need to focus on making sure that we have enhanced sentences with those crimes. But also we need to make sure that we are looking at research and identifying those people who are using guns and finding ways to get them out of that life cycle. That's what we need to really look at, digging deep into the underlying issues as to why people are using guns and committing crimes with firearms. You're muted, Helen.
Thank you. Please, beginning with Ms. Walker, please describe ways in which the Sheriff's Department interfaces with local police and under which circumstances sheriff's deputies might have obligations or responsibilities outside their normal jurisdiction.
Well, the Sheriff's Department interfaces with other law enforcement agencies when there is a critical incident and support is needed. So when that occurs, there can often be a misunderstanding between the various agencies if there isn't a measure of respect between the two agencies prior to the critical incident. You're going to hear me talk about that a lot here. And the reason why I do that is because we can't afford to make mistakes out there when it is critical, even when it's not critical. So developing and formulating a relationship with outside agencies is very important. Making sure that we set up a plan of operation so that when we are called to support one another, we already know what each other is basically responsible and accountable for doing. At the end of it, we have to still take care of the logistics by writing everything down and documenting what we've done, documenting what went well and what did not go well. But also prior to the critical incident, we need to do a comparison and a contrast of what works. What are the best practices? What has worked in the past? What didn't work? Why? How can we improve upon that so that when something happens in the Alameda County and in any area surrounding Alameda County, we already know what we need to do and we're just really working together. It should not be a fight.
30 seconds.
Whose jurisdiction it is. It should be a coming together of this is what we have in front of us. This is what we need to do to solve it. All of us have a part to play. We want to go home at the end of the night and we want to take care of the community. We want to ensure that there's public safety, not out of fear, but because we are empathetic, because we do understand and we want things to move forward in a positive direction for all parties.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sanchez.
Great, thank you. So I've noted what Joanne said, and we are a Region 2 mutual aid coordinator with the Sheriff's Office, and that operates out of our Office of Emergency Services. And we take pride in training a vast number of local and other county agencies in emergency response to a number of disasters or critical incidents. So that is something that I am proud of to be a part of, that we do have those communications and we do have relationships. Where we need to improve upon is being that entity that reaches out cities. We'll take, for example, Oakland. Oakland has a number of issues, and especially with gun crime, but we are all suffering with gun crime and guns being taken off the street during traffic stops, during probation searches, you name it. Guns are present everywhere and in higher numbers than what I'm used to seeing. So how do we as a county law enforcement agency reach out to our city partners to ask them, maybe we do a team effort to address and focus on gun crime? How do we work together to make this, that we make our streets safer, that we get guns off the street? So we're all suffering through it. I see the need for us to actually work collaboratively more with our city agencies to attack this issue. It is a huge issue that is endangering our residents and our business owners. I mean, they are the ones that are really seeing the impacts from this. So it's definitely a team effort that needs to happen. And that is something that I would like to promote and bring to the agency as far as being that ask to our cities as far as any assistance that they need and bringing together a team.
Hey, thank you. And Mr. Ahern.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, part of the job of the sheriff is to work in conjunction with the federal, state, and local agencies. So on the federal agencies, we work with the FBI, and you mentioned guns. We work with the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms unit. We work with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, dealing with the people who are exporting and importing illegal weapons, firearms that we've noted come from Nevada and Arizona into our area. We gather that information with our partners from the NICRIC, which is a Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, of which I'm the chair for the Intelligence Committee. So the information comes through me and we share it with our local partners. At the state level, we work at the State Mutual Aid. As the Director of Emergency Services at our Office of Emergency Services, I work with the state OES people with the local wildfires we've had. One of them being the third largest wildfire in the California's history. We worked with mitigating the fire and the loss of property and saving lives as we evacuated people from dangerous areas. Locally, I sit as the head of the Chief and Sheriff's Association, where we work with each and every entity that's law enforcement and badge that includes the District Attorney's Office and our special districts, where we share that information and work off of key points to mitigate crime in our area and the best way to respond to acts of violence.
30 seconds.
Specifically, we're working on the armed caravans right now and how we can best work with those committing those dangerous crimes.
Okay, thank you. This is a fairly long question, so listen carefully. Ms. Sanchez, you're up first. Constitutional sheriffs assert they have the power not only to enforce the law, but to be the ultimate arbiters of what the law is in their counties, contending that this authority supersedes that of all other government officials, including state governors and the president. They refuse to enforce a range of public safety laws, from local mask mandates to state and federal gun laws. If the sheriff's office was directed by the federal or state government to enforce a mandate, order, or law that you believe to be unconstitutional, what action would you take?
So I think that there is a conversation to be had, and that's where there has to be a presence with those who are putting forth mandates and protocols, to have a conversation with those who are impacted. This is something that the community calls for. Whenever there's a decision that is concerning that the sheriff's office would make, community members want to be included in that conversation. And this is something that we should be a part of when there is an entity that is enforcing a mandate that affects people's, whether it's their jobs, whether it is their livelihood. That conversation should be, and we should have a seat at that table. So it's a rather broad question as far as like, what would you do about it? Because there's certain things, that come into play with regardless, what that decision is. But I think that if if we are mandated to enforce something, we have to follow what that direction is, right? And if the intent is for public safety, then that is what the intent is. And if it's for the intent of safety for our staff, then I mean that it's very hard to answer that question not knowing what that would be. But bottom line is I dislike when there is
30 seconds.
There is any type of mandate where the conversation is not had, where there's input from all sides that are impacted by it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ahern.
Yeah, thank you very much. So if we thought that there was a unconstitutional mandate that you were talking about, the first thing we'd do is go to the Superior Court and ask for an injunction to delay that order. We have access to us by the county council, who has been our attorney for the sheriff's office, who's been able to answer questions regards to mandates that I've had to enforce in the past. We also have the California State Sheriff's Association that has legal counsel that provides us with guidance as well regarding these very controversial issues. However, in the past, we've had to enforce mandates put on by the public health, recently during COVID-19. And I've had to enforce a curfew due to the riots that were going on within the city of Oakland. And so in order to provide public safety, you have to take these very dramatic steps, but you have to make sure you're within lawful authority to do so. And if the county council and our state sheriff's attorney have provided us with that counsel and guidance, we follow that guidance. So we're in a position where we have to follow each and every law that are being passed, but we do have the authority to have those laws questioned at the court level.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Walker.
Yes, I want to say that I agree with the incumbent when it comes to mandates and the ways that are available for us to deal with any kind of disagreement that may come up. However, what is important here is why these mandates are coming up, why they're important, who are they going to impact, and what can we do to improve public safety. If following a mandate is something that is lawful and constitutional, and I disagree with it, I can deal with my disagreement later. What I'm looking at is the larger picture. How is this going to serve the community? What is going to happen when we go forward with this particular mandate? Will it save lives? Is it something that's important because it is going to help the people in Alameda County to remain alive and to go on with their daily lives with their families without any kind of intrusion from law enforcement? I think that if it is a law, we need to go ahead and we need to abide by that law until we can bring all of the parties to the table and figure out how we're going to make the change that the law enforcement community may feel is important. And I have to put myself in that position. If I feel so passionate about a particular disagreement that I'm willing to go to the next steps to ensure that we can start looking at the law a little bit differently so we can figure out who we need to talk to change the law, then it's important that I do that. But what's foremost important is keeping the public safe. In order to do that, if I have to go through a mandate and follow it through, then I am going to do that and we can hash out all of the rest later.
Okay, thank you. All right, beginning with Mr. Ahern this time. The county sheriff oversees the county jail. A 2019 investigation found that Alameda County's Santa Rita jail had the highest death rate of any jail in Northern California, and that there's a direct correlation between those who die by suicide and those housed in isolation called administrative segregation. The Department of Justice found overuse of isolation to be unconstitutional and that it violates the rights of the mentally ill. What should be done to correct the situation?
Well, that audit came out in 2019, and we've been directing our attention specifically to that audit to make corrections. And so the number of hours of people been kept in their cells has been decreased greatly. where we've also worked on a matter to take the number of ADSIG people and reclassify them so they could be out in a group setting under an agreement between the members that are going to be out at the same time. So although there's been a number of deaths, we've made great strides in reducing the number of deaths. A lot of those deaths are due to overdoses. So we brought in canines to help us with narcotic detection. It was one of the first agencies in the state of California to bring Narcan into a jail setting where our deputies can apply that quickly to save lives. So although the agencies are working to reduce that, we have to work at our additional programs for opioid addiction, which we've expanded our medical assisted treatment program as well. We've also worked with the behavioral health unit to decrease the number of suicides. In 2020, we had 0. Unfortunately, in 2021, that number has increased. We've used technology with our phone company to track specific messages sent by our inmate population to their loved ones outside. We've looked for keyword search and then
30
address
seconds.
those people at their cells so that we could better prevent them from harming themselves. We've added medical staff and behavioral health people to our intake system. We've worked with our adult forensic behavioral health unit to reduce the number of events throughout the year. We're very proud of the treatment that they provided to our inmate population. We're working on specific reviews of each and every one of those deaths that have occurred within our facility. And it has a great benefit to reducing the number. However, our society and our city of Santa Rita Jail is just a microcosm of what goes on within the cities and counties itself. So as we see our population suffering from depression, our inmates are suffering from that same problem, and we're trying to address it with them individually.
Thank you. I believe you had extra time, so Mel, can you give the other two candidates a little extra time?
Will do.
Okay. Ms. Walker.
Yes, would you repeat the question again? I want to make sure I answer it sufficiently.
Sure. The county sheriff
Like
oversees
3 for 3 on the questions. I'm getting good feedback.
the county sheriff oversees the county jail. A 2019 investigation found the Alameda County Santa Rita Jail had the highest death rate of any jail in Northern California, and that there is a direct correlation between those who die by suicide and those housed in isolation. The Department of Justice found overuse of isolation to be unconstitutional and that it violates the rights of the mentally ill.
My wife said it's done good.
To correct, Mr. Ahern, if you could mute. What should be done to correct the situation?
Okay, let me just give the audience some background. Since Mr. Ahern has been in office, a lot of deaths have occurred. We know that it's over 50, but in 2014, there were 10, 2015, 8, 2016, 6, 2017, 6, 2018, 5, 2019, 10, 2023. We're not finished with 2021 yet. I don't have the stats on that, but my understanding is that 19 of the 50 actually committed suicide. We know that it is unconstitutional for people to be held in isolation. And according to the website, in Santa Rita Jail, people are only allowed to come out 1 hour per week. 1 hour per week. I want to repeat that, 1 hour per week. How can they not become suicidal in a situation where they have no control, they don't see their family members, they're locked down, and they are dependent upon somebody else for their livelihood? How can they come out and be normal? What I want to say here is, I find it very interesting that out of all the years that Mr. Ahern has been the sheriff, this is the first year that he cooperated with DOJ and actually went in and signed the consent decree. Why did it take so long? Why did it take so many people dying? So many families who are suffering because they didn't find out what really happened to their loved one, how that person perished. They didn't get a chance to see any tapes. People had to resort to lawsuits against Mr. Ahern as well as Santa Rita Jail. Why did it take so long for him to decide to move on this and show the empathy that he said he learned from his family? That was what he introduced as who he is as an individual and as a leader. So he's been here since 2014, and this is 2022. He just signed the consent decree in
30 seconds.
November of last year. If people matter to you, why did it take so long? I would do some changes. I would definitely make changes in screening. That's what we've done in San Francisco already. When the officers see that someone is acting weird, that's usually an indication that something is going on, whether they are extremely mentally ill, meaning that they've had it for a very long time, or it's something that's acute. You can look at a person, and if the officers don't know what to do, the
Time.
deputies don't know what to do, they should be given the right training so they can learn how to see what is going on in order to keep the people who are housed at Santa Rita Jail safe.
Okay.
And that has not happened.
Thank you. And Ms. Sanchez.
All right, I just want to clarify that we do offer those who are separated for their recreation 1 hour per day. It is not 1 hour per week. We do make efforts to get people out as much as possible. Those are our minimums. But going back to the question, being that I work and currently manage Santa Rita Jail, it's unfortunate that the people that do come into our facility have pre-existing medical conditions, substance abuse issues, and mental health conditions that have gone long untreated. So we experience death in the jail just as we see out in the community. However, we should be able to say that we did everything that we could to prevent a death. And if we fall short of that, the public and their families deserve to have information and some truth as to what happened. Having the experience and working in the jail, I know where we can make improvements already. Right now, there's no communication with families who lose someone while they're in custody. And that is simply not humane. There has to be some information that's shared with the family. We should not leave them in the dark. And I understand, being a previous investigator, that you can't share all the information, but there is something that we can do. Services such as chaplaincy or even being connected to grief counselors should be something that we should set in motion as soon as we identify next of kin. Public is entitled to know that we have a death in custody. The fact that we wait until we're asked for information is just unacceptable. We need to inform the public as soon as we can, while also, of course, being mindful and respectful of the family who's just suffered a loss. So there are improvements that can be made with the additional staff that we are going to be bringing into the jail will assist us with having those extra eyes that will be they'll allow us to see behaviors and symptoms early on so that we can address them and get our medical partners into play, as well as our behavioral health partners into play to address and assess individuals who may be decompensating. So that will be a blessing. We're hoping to onboard and continue to onboard people, but we do need additional staff to make sure that our folks are monitored as they should be.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Walker, you're up first with this one. Alameda County supervisors have unanimously adopted a Care First, Jail Last policy that aims to reduce the number of people with mental illness and substance abuse in Santa Rita Jail. What will you do as sheriff to promote implementation of this resolution? Will you support,
I'm
sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Will you support reallocation of funds from incarceration of mentally ill people toward provision of community-based care? What do you see as the most promising next steps in this direction? Okay,
well, I work with the community regarding members of our community who are suffering from mental illness. I have listened to parents complain and talk about the horrible job that's being done in Alameda County. These are their words, not mine. They're the ones who are trying very hard to work with family member who is spiraling out of control. They don't have the skill set to continue. They need law enforcement's help. And they are just hoping that when law enforcement shows up, that we are trained adequately enough to de-escalate the situation so person who is ill to cooperate with us so we can transfer them to a hospital where their medical needs are met. I don't see a problem with the supervisor saying it's a community first, a care first, and jail last as a last resort. I'm not having a problem with that at all. What I have a problem with is that we don't have enough support in the community to house the people who are suffering from the mental illness. There are services that are available in Alameda County for families who are struggling to help a member who is really suffering badly. But sometimes when the police are called or when the sheriffs get involved, it is something that needs to be taken care of immediately. And so screening for that person is the first step. Do the officers or the deputies even know how to screen? Do they know what a mental illness looks like? Is there, and
30
secondly,
seconds.
is there policy and procedure set up for what the deputies are supposed to do when they feel that someone is suffering? And thirdly, are there resources in the community where we can take the money, use it so that those community-based organizations are funded appropriately so that they can help those people who are suffering and their family members? That's the question. And so far, Alameda County has fallen short on that. That's what the parents are telling me.
Time.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Sanchez.
Yeah, so I read the Reimagining Adult Justice proposition that was given by Supervisor Valle. And I agree that the mentally ill do not belong in the jail. The jail environment is not conducive to providing proper treatment. It is not the best environment for people to recover, if there is any such thing as recovering from any mental illness issues that they may be suffering through. I do believe that we do need to focus some allocation of resources to make sure that there are places for individuals that are suffering mental crisis to go to. There's just not enough of that right now. I do know that the DA's office is working with La Familia, with the CARES location. It's a navigation center for those who are homeless, who suffer through either controlled substance abuse, whether they are suffering from mental illness. If they are arrested or contacted for a low-level crime, a non-violent crime, then the ask is for law enforcement to cite and release that individual, but also provide transportation to the CARES location. And the CARES location, they'll be met with a case manager, a supporter, a peer supporter who will contact that individual and start that case management through that avenue. And so those are solutions that we need to put into play. We need to put into play solutions that will keep those who are suffering mental illness out of the jail. But there's just not enough locations to put people right now, and to put that as a alternative to incarceration. So I definitely agree with some of the points that were definitely made in this proposal, and I would work towards collaborating with probation and with our justice partners to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ahern.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we work very hard with the CARES program. We do it on a daily basis. And so we don't have our first action with the people of mental health or substance abuse is not our first response to arrest. We work with CARES, but there's a specific program working with the district attorney's office as well as La Familia in our area. We work with community-based organizations like Roots and Abode. Roots is more for the Oakland area, and Abode has been more successful in the South Alameda County area. The CARES First program deals with housing and employment and deals with the mental health issues as well as substance abuse. So we have a crime prevention unit as well as a community policing unit that work to address those issues. We come in contact with those people, we advise them where they could go to better suit their program, how they could address their needs. In meeting with Roots, they have a trailer right outside of our San Rita jail, so they get people once they're released and they have access to their programming. Roots has been very educational to us, advising us that the people who suffer from substance abuse and mental health issue that result in homelessness have 1 to 2 to 3 to 4
30 seconds.
different elements involving their issues regarding homelessness. So we work with the CARES program to direct them to those services and work very hard every day with that to better the quality of life for those individuals.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Sanchez. The COVID virus is a threat to incarcerated populations and to those who work with them. How will you ensure that the incarcerated population is protected from jail personnel and visitors who could be exposed outside the jail environment? And also, are there consequences for jail personnel who fail to observe the required protocols?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the pandemic and the pandemic in the jail is definitely a concern for everyone. And, you know, when the pandemic hit, Supervisor Valle requested that we open up a forum for advocates who were concerned about our jail population to call in and ask what type of response and logistically if we were able to support making sure that every incarcerated individual had a mask, whether they had sanitation wipes and cleaning supplies. So it was a good effort and we still continue those calls. I have learned a lot from the community input, and we've actually put some measures that were requested into play through those phone calls. So it has been a benefit to not only the sheriff's office, but public health and those who are advocating for safety of those who are incarcerated in our jail. But, you know, just to kind of give you a quick rundown, right now, when we have an arrestee that comes in, they're quarantined for 14 days in an intake housing unit. Within 48 hours of their arrival, they're given a test, and then they're given another test at day 10. So anyone who works in any capacity within the jail, they are tested, like such as our kitchen workers or our pod workers, they're tested weekly. Vaccines are offered throughout someone's stay. They're offered a vaccine once they enter and then repeatedly as they make connections with their medical staff. So
30 seconds.
Cleaning supplies are available to everybody, but in speaking to our public health partners, you know, we know that there's a rapid growth of Omicron. We believe that it's a result from a combination of increased transmissibility and the ability for it to evade immunity through vaccination or previous infections. I recently instructed staff to put out an updated station order to require surgical masks or N95s in areas that are quarantined or just throughout the whole facility. There's no longer allowed a cloth mask. So I will continue to ask for our law enforcement agencies to avoid bringing in arrestees and to cite them in the field, and then working with public health.
Thank you. And Mr. Ahern.
Okay, just repeat the question so I make sure I'm giving you.
It's Mr. Ahern's turn, but I can give it to both of you.
Okay,
The COVID virus is a threat to incarcerated populations and those who work with them. How will you ensure that the incarcerated population is protected from jail personnel and visitors who could be exposed outside the jail environment? Also, are there consequences for jail personnel who fail to observe the required protocols? And Mr. Ahern.
Okay, on March 16th, 2020, I declared a public health emergency in the county due to the COVID-19. That gave the county access to $270 million for federal funding related to the COVID supplemental grant. So back in 2020, we did not have access to the personal protection equipment that was needed. We set up a warehouse to the backside of San Rita Jail to provide those PPEs to both our staff, the people that work within the jail facility, and the inmate population. We then began to testing and make sure that we mitigated the amount of COVID within the facility. We also provided vaccinations. I was the first one in the county to provide vaccination access to all law enforcement and first responders. We set up a max vaccination site at our Office of Emergency Services. We did that as we formed a multiple disciplinary task force to deal with the COVID, to deal with logistics, planning, the finance, and the operational needs. In that planning, we took in great consideration our jail population and the risk to the inmates. We worked with public health to make sure they had a protective sanitation program. With those funds that we were able to acquire, we went out and acquired 9 UV emitter. We got an ultraviolet C disinfection
30
system.
seconds.
We also got a Clorox Total 360 system. So we work on sanitation, education, and working with our inmate population to get them vaccinated so they understand the way they can remain safe once they're in custody and once they're released.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Walker.
Yes, I don't see this as a difficult question. I see it as something that deals with public safety again, and working within the population of people who are in that jail and the visitors who come. There should be information for the visitors so that they know, in order to keep the inmate population safe, that they must wear their mask and they must follow the mandate. That's what we need them to know. If they're sick, they should not come. If they have a fever, they should not enter the jail. If they are someone who is suffering from any kind of, let's say, problem that they can articulate, I don't feel well, my stomach is bothering me, whatever the case may be, they are not allowed into the jail until they take care of their medical needs. With the personnel, there's a mandate already in order. We all know what that mandate is. It's very, very simple. Wear your mask. If you're going into a facility where it is locked down and people cannot get in and out of there freely, then you know, in order to make sure that you don't infect the rest of the population, you need to have your mask. Now we know that they need to have a surgical N95 mask. That information should be posted somewhere in Santa Rita Jail so that everyone knows that these are the rules and regulations. These are the expectations. Why? Because we're trying to keep people alive. They're just simply in jail. They're not on death row. We need to keep them alive. So the most humane thing to do is to cover
30
yourself.
seconds.
You are making sure that you don't bring anything or take anything into that jail where it compromises anyone. The other thing is about keeping the area clean. That's our responsibility. And it is the sheriff's responsibility to set the tone for the sheriff's department. So if that is a part of the policy and the procedures, then those people who are either contracted to work inside and those people who are working as personnel need to follow that, or else they can't come in.
Time.
Okay, thank you. I might have missed it, but Ms. Sanchez and Mr. Ahern, I did not hear the answer to, are there consequences if prison staff or jail staff do not follow protocols?
Right, we have policies and procedures in place that with 3 medical checkpoints prior to entering the facility, so people that are sick aren't allowed. We also have a policy in place that from the Board of Supervisors that mandates all of our staff be vaccinated. If they're not vaccinated, they have to get tested weekly. So all these steps are already in place and the practices are been followed. There is possibility of termination if they fail to abide by the rules of the county. And it's examined by the courts, and the courts experts say it's a model policy that other jail facilities should follow.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sanchez, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, so the sheriff touched on most of it, but we have written people up as far as not conforming to our mandate for testing weekly. So those are efforts that we are making. People are being held accountable for those testings. So it is very difficult to track hundreds of tests. So we need to make sure that when we are going to hold someone accountable for not partaking in a test, then we need to make sure that accurate information we're relying on. So it does take time, but we do make that effort.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Mr. Ahern, you're up first.
Helen?
Oh, yeah.
Helen?
Sure. Yes.
I just wanted to add one other thing to my statement, one other comment, and that is getting people to get tested or vaccinated is not a difficult chore. not with the invention of the computer, and a copy of the form that says I was vaccinated by Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson and Johnson. You put it in the computer and everybody knows where it is, especially staff services. This is not a difficult thing to deal with. Just
Okay.
wanted to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ahern, you're up. Transparency increases the public trust in law enforcement. What data do you think should be available to the public that might increase that trust?
Well, transparency is very important, and we work really hard to make sure the public understands what we're doing and the steps we're taking. What I've started since 2007 is a strategic planning process. We meet 2 times a year. We put out basically a business plan for the agency for our goals and objectives. They're evaluated each and every session. All of those notes are then transcribed and forwarded to the Board of Supervisors and made public for all of our public records requests. Recently, in the last 3 years, our requests for public records have increased greatly due to the recent legislations that's been passed. And so we're transparent on our uses of force. Our policies, our procedures are posted on our website, and our strategic plan is made known to the entire agency. The other thing we do is we have an agency-wide departmental meeting once a month, and all of our units report out, and that is transcribed and provided to all of our units. We also have a public records request unit that is available to provide information to the public upon their request for anything that we're doing. So we believe in transparency. We meet with the various groups in our community. We answer to all the questions. I've answered questions to the religious community, to the faith-based community, to the immigration community, to the ACLU, to the NAACP. We meet with those groups on a regular basis and provide information to each and every one of the questions that they present to us.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Walker.
Yes, transparency. I agree that having information available to the community through the public records or through the Sunshine Ordinance is very, very important. The issue in Alameda County comes to me through the family members of those people who have died while in custody. And what they are saying is they're not getting the information that Mr. Ahern is saying he's providing. He said he provides it to the faith-based community, the ACLU, the NAACP, but guess what? The family members of those people who have died while in custody are still saying they didn't get anything, no help, no assistance from the sheriff. So if there is such a thing as transparency and we're supposed to work toward that, it also includes the surviving family members of those people who have died while in custody. It just makes sense to me. It's not difficult. If you can talk to the faith-based community, the ACLU, the NAACP, if you can talk to all of those members of the community who are not related to people who have died while in the Santa Rita jail, then why can't you talk to the family members?
Okay.
Isn't that part of transparency? And if it is important to us as law enforcement professionals, why hasn't that
30
happened at
seconds.
Santa Rita jail? Why hasn't that happened at Santa Rita jail? That's what the community wants to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Sanchez.
Well, Joanne, you stole my thunder, but I've spoken on it already. We do need to do better with how we provide information to the public. When we do have someone that passes away in custody, we should be proactive in sharing information that we can. But also not just sharing information to the public, but providing services to the family. They have lost a loved one, and I think we lose sight of that, and that needs to be improved upon because we have human beings that we are caring for, and we need to treat their family with respect. So that entails sharing information and hopefully being a part of their healing process. But also, transparency is not just in deaths that occur in our facility. It is with respect to how, I've talked to a number of people, and I know that we can, because other agencies do, provide more information on our budget and our spending. So there's a lot of narrative that is developed and false narratives that are developed. There's risk for false narrative when you don't provide information to at least be very transparent and open about budgetary process and spending. So why allow for that negative narrative to be developed? Get out ahead of it. There's really nothing to hide when it comes to
30
how you
seconds.
spend. As long as we are spending responsibly, then there shouldn't be any issues with that. So that is something that I would like to bring forth. Not only the proactivity of sharing information regarding deaths in jail, but also a very transparent vision and reflection of how the sheriff's office budget is spent.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question, we start out with Ms. Walker. In most California counties, including Alameda, the sheriff acts as coroner. Budget considerations are mentioned as the reasons often. Some of the larger counties in California have separated the sheriff's office and that of the coroner, often citing conflict of interest. After the resignation of 2 forensic pathologists in San Joaquin Valley in 2018, due to the overruling of 4 findings by the sheriff, the Board of Supervisors voted to replace the coroner's office with the medical examiner's office run by a forensic pathologist. Do you see the possible conflict of interest as a problem? Why or why not? And a possible solution?
Okay, I'm going to answer this in a couple of ways. The first, we are law enforcement officers, and really it is, let me just call it honor. People expect us to have some honor and some integrity when we are involved in investigations. I personally feel that if there is an officer involved shooting, it takes place in Alameda County, and somehow I am, as the sheriff, responsible for providing, making sure that there's an effective investigation where all of the information that needs to be collected is done, then it is my responsibility to have the integrity to make sure that all of the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. I think if you don't have someone who has the integrity in that office, you're going to have some problems with those people who want to know what happened to their loved one. So instead of waiting until there is a big crisis about how someone died while in custody, why not hand over that investigation to the FBI? Let the FBI be the ones who are responsible for that investigation. That way there's transparency with it. It is not left up to the Alameda County Sheriff to be the one who comes out or not come out about what happened, what led up to it, and the end
30
result.
seconds.
I think it is just better. It makes more sense to hand over those investigations to another agency so that our agency doesn't come under fire because someone thinks that we were not transparent or we don't have any integrity. That is my personal feeling about it. And that's what I would do if I am the sheriff. I would be the one that investigation to the FBI.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sanchez?
Thank you. So I understand that some of the concern is with how deaths are reported and how the sheriff may influence that type of reporting. And although I have no experience of that ever occurring in the sheriff's office, I do know that there are ways instead of really spending money on having a separation of entities, if there is a concern in any way, shape, or form that we have, and many people know, we are entering into a field where we are going to be having an oversight committee that will be monitoring the sheriff's office. So if there's a concern with how we report data, then maybe that layer, there can be someone there that is reviewing our information, our data to ensure that we are reporting properly. So there are things and mechanisms that we can put into play as opposed to doing a complete split. When it does come to incidents such as officer involved shootings or whatnot, where there might be an investigation that's related to the sheriff's office, if it is in our best interest and to transfer over to one of our neighboring counties, that investigation, then we should be open to that. And that is something that I will be open to, just to remove that feeling, if anyone has any mistrust that we would do anything.
30 seconds.
We have the highest integrity here at the sheriff's office, but if we transferred over a coroner's case that involved our staff members, that would give peace of mind to our community. And we trust that our partners do a great job. So that is an option, and that is something that I would be looking into.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ahern.
Yeah, first of all, the FBI is a federal agency and they don't get involved in local death investigations outside their jurisdiction. The entity that would review any type of questionable death investigation for sheriff's office would be the Department of Justice from the state of California. Years ago, decades ago, under Sheriff Plummer, he took over the Coroner's Bureau because of corruption and because of problems and lack of efficiency. So we've been doing that job for decades now, and we're way more efficient. We're very responsive to the needs of the agency that is involved in that death investigation. Death investigations are not just completed by the coroner's office. There's the local agency that does the investigation. Those deaths, if they're in question, get reviewed by the district attorney's office. If it is a homicide, then the death investigation is conducted by my officers who are coroner's investigators. Then all of those reports are then forwarded to the pathologist. The pathologist then determines the cause of death and the reason behind that death. And they get access to all of those various reports, which avoids any type of corruption because there's multiple agencies and they're cross-referenced to one another, which would alleviate any type of questioning of the investigation. When there is a questionable death investigation, like an officer-involved death, Alameda County Sheriff's Office has been called on to help other local agencies. We've done that locally to make sure that that agency gets the experience of my investigators who work on these cases. We have over 1,000 investigations of death each year due to the 10,000 deaths in Alameda County. 1,000 of them fall underneath our jurisdiction. With that, I'm also the Coroner's Mutual Aid Coordinator for our region, and we've responded to outside counties because of our reputation. We've responded to Santa Barbara as well as Butte County to help them in their death investigation. So we do a fantastic job. We're very proud of it. It's one of the most difficult jobs that you can have as a deputy sheriff, and I couldn't be more proud and honored of the work they do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ahern. All right, Ms. Sanchez, you kind of jumped ahead with this question, so you get it first. The Alameda Board of Supervisors has been holding public meetings recently regarding the addition of sheriff oversight structure to improve public transparency and accountability. Do you support such a structure? Why or why not?
So I believe any public entity should not be afraid of anyone coming and reviewing processes and practices. I think there are benefits to having an oversight committee where we perform a function and we are a law enforcement agency. And sometimes we do things because we've been doing that and moving in that direction for so long. To have someone who is not a law enforcement officer to come in and actually provide some insight as to how the public perceives some of the actions that we have or the practices that we have or policies that we have is something that we can learn from. So it is something that I welcome. It is something that I will work with the Board of Supervisors on, with the establishment of that committee. We are, and especially, I know firsthand, the jail is constantly monitored, and we constantly have new folks coming in to give us some recommendations that are very reasonable. So I don't see it being a bad thing to have an oversight committee come in and provide recommendations on how we can improve. There may be things that we will disagree on, but we definitely will listen to what they have to say. And I'm confident that some of the folks that will be part of this team will have experience with potentially having experience working with other agencies
30
and
seconds.
accountability. So it's definitely welcomed by myself. It's not something that I think anything negative about. It's definitely something that I think we can benefit from.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Draper.
Yes, it's not a matter of whether we want the oversight committee or not. The oversight committee is coming, so we're going to welcome them and work with them to see if we can make any improvements in our agency. Our agency is not afraid of any audits. In fact, we're very open to audits. We get inspected every year by the Department of Justice, by the Bureau of State of Community Corrections for our jail. We have public health inspections along with the state, and our grand jury comes in and inspects our jail every year. We do a number of accreditations, so we're audited almost through every aspect of what we do. Our jail has 2 different accreditations. Our law enforcement services is accredited. Our bomb squad is accredited, as well as our dispatch center and our academy. As far as our agency goes for law enforcement services, we're required to follow everything on the guidelines from police officers standards and training, which is a state element. So we welcome any review, and we want to make sure that we can be compared to other great agencies as well. We've worked with the inspector generals on other audits, and we've come up with some great solutions. So we look for an objective group that will come in and we can tell them why we do things, what the laws are. We can help educate them, and maybe they show us some great new avenues. Our last audit by the state indicated that we didn't have any vocational programs. So since that audit, we created at least 3 vocational programs within our
30
jail
seconds.
to help people who are incarcerated learn how to re-enter into our community once they get released. Those programs include carpentry, barbery, long as dealing with kitchen and workers, so they get jobs in the restaurant and service industries. So we welcome, and we hope it gets us to improve our agency.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Walker.
Yes, did you say I had 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, then I need to hurry. What I want to say is that sheriff oversight, I believe, is necessary because it keeps, it's a check, another check and balance. I think that it's very important that we review how we do things and why we do things. So if our policies are outdated, we need sometimes other people to come in and say, hey, you know what? You've been doing this for a while. It hasn't worked. We think we have a better idea. Let's see what we can do. Public perception versus reality. There is a public perception that the Alameda County Sheriff's Department is corrupt. I can't say that any clearer. And sometimes it may, for that person or that family, it may ring true for them because of the way they were treated. If we don't develop our partnership with people in the community so they can understand through education what we do and why we do it, we're not being as successful as we can be. To tell us that there are inspections that have taken place through the Department of Justice, Public Health, Grand Jury. There's an accreditation for your dispatch center, your academy, the bomb squad. There's an audit by the Inspector General to educate and explain things. And that the last audit, since you've been in office since 2014 or 2007 rather, the last audit showed that, you know, you needed to, there was no audit of your programs that for reentry. For the
30
incarcerated.
seconds.
If you have people who are incarcerated and you put them into programs where they cannot sustain themselves, they cannot live, then does your program really work?
Yeah, I take
If they-
exception to
if
calling
they
the
can
agency
afford-
corrupt. If you're
if
going
they
to call
can-
us
let
corrupt,
me
please
get-
bring
let
forward
me
any
get-
type of
let me
proof
get-
that you have. We'll be glad to
Excuse me.
investigate it.
Excuse
But
me.
that's
Let me-
uncalled for.
Let
Okay.
me get finished.
Ms. Walker, you're muted.
So in close, I would like to simply say this, that it's one thing to talk about what is in place. It's another thing to talk about whether or not it is working. That's all I'm saying. And in order to find whether or not it's working, you've got to bring the community in to let them tell you what their experience has been. So Sheriff Oversight Committee, yes, I welcome it because we need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, this might be your last question from me, but well, hold on. This goes to Mr. Ahern. The doctrine of qualified immunity has shielded officers from civil liability in hundreds of cases, even when accused of destroying property, killing innocent people they mistook for suspects, or stealing thousands of dollars. Please explain your understanding of qualified immunity and your position on the doctrine. Mr. Ahern.
Qualified immunity is very important for law enforcement, just like it's important for our judges and other people involved in the justice system. Recently, in the last 10 years, we've seen a 60% reduction in people applying for law enforcement. If you remove qualified immunity, fewer people are going to enter in law enforcement, and those in law enforcement may decide to retire and leave immediately. The qualified immunity is a requirement for law enforcement. When people do violate the law, they are prosecuted. When they violate policy, they're sent to internal affairs investigation. We have a very robust internal affairs investigation that answers to each and every allegation. We then investigate that allegation and have it reviewed. If there is criminal activity, we've provided that information to the district attorney's office, and when called for, they filed charges. And we make sure that our people have the training, experience, and education needed to avoid those type of situations. Sometimes they do wrong, and when they do wrong, those people are held accountable for their wrongdoings.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Walker.
Yes. Qualified immunity. Because of how I grew up and because of my experiences in the United States, I come from a very different position than Mr. Ahern. I believe that if you do something and it is wrong, and you go through the process, you go through IA, you go through the criminal aspect of things, they evaluate what you did, what you knew, when you knew it, why you made the decisions that you made. And if they come up with the fact that you did something that's wrong, and then they don't take action, they, meaning those supervisors, do not take action and make sure that you are held accountable for what you did, we might want to visit qualified immunity, because you cannot hide behind the fact that you're a law enforcement officer and you did something that's wrong and you shouldn't be held accountable for it. We're telling the community that when you go out and use a gun and you kill someone or you injure someone because of whatever you're thinking, you're held accountable and you're going to go to prison for it. And you mean to tell me that we're having a different standard for police officers who are humans, just like everybody else? I don't get that. I don't understand that. So I'm not saying that we're going out and we are doing a witch hunt on officers. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying that we all know that there are some people who are in law enforcement who really should not be law enforcement officers.
30 seconds.
We know. So since we know that, we want to stop things from happening. So we need to talk to them, train them, let them know what to expect, and to let them know that they're going to be held accountable like any other citizen.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Sanchez.
Yes, so qualified immunity is something that it does protect officers when they take action while they are in the performance of their duties. Qualified immunity, definitely, it's something that the agency has a responsibility to make sure that we are training our staff appropriately. And so the agency has a responsibility in that, but there is that potential for staff members to act on their own. And that's where qualified immunity should not be afforded to them. It's for people who are definitely doing things that they should not be, and they should be held accountable for those actions. So with respect to how we hold our people to account, if any one of our staff members behave unprofessionally or commit egregious acts, I will make sure that they will be held accountable. if you're someone that is going to use your authority to mistreat people, the Alameda County Sheriff's Office is not for you. I am not afraid to impose discipline. Discipline is intended to correct bad behavior. Even small things need to be addressed so that they don't grow into bigger issues. When people are not held accountable on small things, and violations go unchecked, it only sends a message that that activity is condoned. And that is the wrong message to send. We have great people that are doing great things and the right things for the right reasons on a day-to-day, but they are discouraged when they see people who are doing the wrong thing and they continue to get away with bad behavior. So I will make sure that incidents are not swept under the rug, that staff are held accountable for poor behavior. And I'm committed to putting appropriate measures in place to employ members of higher moral character. And I will make sure that when investigations are started, that I am not the decider on whether that investigation moves forward or not.
Okay, thank you. And the last question from me, and then we'll move to viewers' questions. And this goes to Mr. Ahern. What measures do you propose to detect and counteract racist and radical behavior in the Sheriff's Department?
Well, we have a policy in place that's underneath the cardinal sins that we don't accept any type of racial activity. We face termination for any positive outcome of an internal investigation that shows racist activity, as well as anyone that is found to be untruthful in their line of work. So we take it very seriously, and we make sure that we have training. We've recently gone to a training for all of our staff to make sure they're aware of it. There is a new law where we're now recording our stops and recording those for the REPA Act. And we've been doing that for about 15 years now, where we show our statistical information regarding to stops and contacts made by our law enforcement personnel. So we have steps in place. We have a policy in place. Racial activity is not accepted and it faces termination.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Walker.
Color of authority. Under the color of authority, a person is using their uniform in order to make sure they violate the rights of another human being. We know that we have the authority to do that when we make arrests. We don't have the authority to violate people. We have the authority to use the law so that we are following the guidelines that are already set up, so that we have already considered the person's constitutional rights, and we pair that against what the reasonable doubt. After reasonable doubt, there is everything that goes up after that regarding that particular investigation. I am saying to you that the color of authority using that is not against someone to violate them is nothing more than a hate crime. And the person who does it should be held accountable for it, because they know exactly what they're doing, because they've been taught and trained. If our training is insufficient, we need to beef up our training. If our supervision is not up to par, we need to hold those supervisors accountable, because they are vicariously in agreement with the misuse of the authority under the color of authority, which is a hate crime. If our policies and procedures are not up to date, we need to make sure that we straighten that out. And then we need to, again, go back to the community to let the community know what we are doing right now to correct these problems, so that they then are not recipient of poor behavior from our law enforcement personnel. By the way, we have a lot of law enforcement officers who are doing exactly what they should be doing by keeping the streets and the public safe. So I don't want to put them in a group with officers who are using their authority incorrectly.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Sanchez?
Can I ask for the question to be repeated? I don't think I caught the full one.
Of course. What measures do you propose to detect and counteract racist and radical behavior in the Sheriff's Department?
Gotcha. Okay. So number one, constant monitoring as far as, when we have social media that is just being utilized by everyone. Everybody's each other's friend. So the fact that there are posts and we are made aware of it, we need to act on those very quickly and swiftly. There is no room for any racist remarks or ideology to be passed on by our members. It is a cancer, and we need to ensure that once we're made aware of it, that we address it immediately. And the way that you can actually try to, or not try, but there are efforts that are going on right now. And one of those efforts is that there's an organization, the Center for Policing Equity. They partner with law enforcement agencies to gather information from that agency and provide a roadmap for greater transparency and accountability. And it allows for law enforcement to adopt a more just and equitable means of promoting public safety. And so we have to make sure that we are not training people and building a culture where they think that racism or making racial comments or even policing inequitably to our community members is okay. So that is our job as management, to continue
30
to evaluate
seconds.
what we train, but also to reach out to organizations that are willing to come and work with us and review our practices to see if we are making sure that our policing is racially equitable.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to turn you over to Karen and the questions from the audience right now. I'll see you back for your closing statements. Karen? Karen, you're muted.
I'm trying to unmute myself. Thank you. Thank you very much, Helen. And we're going to be asking a few questions from our audience. The first question from our audience will be directed to Ms. Walker. And it is, what are your plans of action for building trust with communities of color?
Well, to answer, I have 2 minutes, right?
Yes, you have 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. The answer to that is simply this. If you want there to be trust in the community, you have to invite them to the table. You have to include them in the process of solving problems that occur. I am not the person who knows what is happening in someone's home. And so therefore, the only person who gets a chance to speak on what needs to transpire. I need to listen to them. And all too often, communities of color have been ignored because those people who were making the decisions felt that they knew better. So the point is that I have to treat them with dignity and respect. And that first starts by listening, asking questions, making sure that I'm clear on what it is that they want, what it is that they feel, and what their experiences have been with law enforcement. After I listen to them and we come together and come to terms with some of the issues that we feel are the most important, I can pair that conversation or what came out of it with some of the resources that are available in Alameda County. If the resources in Alameda County are insufficient, then it's my responsibility to look outside. Now I'm thinking out of the box to help pair them with communities or with agencies that have information where we can make sure that they get what they need in order to move forward. This time moving forward, perhaps without law enforcement, because they have gotten the education, they've gotten the
30
information,
seconds.
and they have what they need in order to move forward. And then I'll tell them my story. What happened to my mother and how I came into law enforcement. And it was because 3 different people in law enforcement said, you are worth it, you are important, and we are here for you. It was their belief in me that helped me to get to this point in my life. And I want people to know that. And I want them to know that it can happen for them. And they don't have to come into law enforcement. They can just go on and do whatever will help them
Time.
be well adjusted.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez?
I think the key to building trust is actually being present. The sheriff should be present in these communities, in all communities. because being accessible is key to having that conversation, right? That dialogue between the community members and what their concerns are. We as law enforcement don't know we don't know all the answers. And sometimes we are able to glean a lot of good information that allows for us to provide a higher level of public safety service to our community members. So presence is an absolute important ability to go out there and not so much invite people to the table, but to go out into the community is really what is necessary to see the environment that people are living in and how do we best serve them, because we need to tailor how we address crimes that occur in certain communities the way that our community members are expecting. So you have to have that conversation, and some of those conversations are uncomfortable. And when we hear from our community members that we maybe fell short in one interaction, we can't be defensive, and we have to be able to take the good and the positive compliments with the bad, because we have to address and acknowledge that sometimes our folks do make mistakes, but we need to address that. And we need to get better.
30
So
seconds.
we have a lot of great members in the agency who are out there communicating with our community members. We have a community policing unit that I envision will grow because we need to incorporate community engagement throughout our agency, not just with the small select group, but throughout our agency. And there's a lot of great agency members that are ready for this.
Thank you. Mr. Ahern?
Yes, not only do we invite the community to the table, my staff and I actually go to their table and have dinner and food and beverages with them. We've addressed the 5 major issues involving problems in the community concerning poverty, education, unemployment, health, and the environment. We address those things through our Deputy Sheriff's Activities League. I created a Youth and Family Services Bureau where we can try to stop the cycle of violence, the cycle of recidivism, and the abuse of substance abuses. Our DSAL unit this year has provided over 500,000 pounds of food to the people in our community who are suffering. The community of trust, those people who are of Hispanic race. We have a Spanish speaking academy that we've held for a number of years so that they can address their concerns with us. We have a program where we work with our out of custody inmates so they can have a job once they get out through our Dig Deep Farms program. We're going to be acquiring over 50 acres in the southern part of Hayward, Fremont area for Ardenwood gardening to give people jobs. We already have acquired land over in Union City off of Mission Boulevard for farming to expand our Dig Deep program.
30 seconds.
We have worked with our community at the REACH program where over 200 young adults come into our center each and every day. So we have a program for our cadets where they can continue on with their education while they are employed with the sheriff's office. And all of these individuals are coming from challenged areas where their income may be as low as $19,000 per
Time.
capita per person. So we understand the issue of poverty and unemployment, and we're working to build trust with those communities.
Thank you very much. The next question will be going to Ms. Sanchez first. Governor Newsom just announced $255 million in grants for local law enforcement over the next 3 years to increase pressure at retail locations and combat organized retail crime, so Californians and small businesses can feel safe. As Alameda County Sheriff, how would you allocate these funds to address this issue in our county?
Absolutely. So what a wonderful effort by the governor to allow for funding to address what we've seen occur over the holidays as far as the smash and grab caravans involving hundreds of people at one time. So social media allows for that message to get pushed out. And we obviously saw the circumstances surrounding that. So it's a team effort. I've I've said this before, and it is something that I encompass as far as my vision for the sheriff's office, to collaborate with our city agencies and share the resources that we're able to have so that we can focus. The more people you have focus on the problem, the better result that you will have. And it's going to take that teamwork to be able to address and put these folks and identify these folks and take them into custody. But also, here we are, we have property crimes that are not being addressed. So people commit crimes that are less than, $1,000, and they're not being held accountable for them. They're kicked right out of jail. So that it's also an effort that we have to have that conversation with our DA's office and our public defender's office, all of our justice partners, to make sure that people are held accountable and they're not just given the opportunity to get back out into society and reoffend. There's got to be a way to hold them into custody, and while they're in custody, be productive about that.
30 seconds.
In custody, we need to offer vocational programs that will be career-based, and this will stop this constant occurrence of crime, and especially petty crime, that continues to surface in the jail. Not just basic skills. We need skills that will put people on a career path. And that's what we're lacking right now. And that's the gap I want to fill and will fill.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ahern?
Yeah, thank you. Retail theft has been a problem for a number of years. I sit on the board of directors for the California State Sheriff's Association, and we met with the governor's office and discussed the issues regarding reduction of penalties for petty theft and crimes. We advised the state at that time that any type of action would obviously create a huge increase in the amount of theft in our retail industry. The retail industry is in support of law enforcement, and we're trying our best to reduce that. As the member of the regional area for our task force that we're putting together to address these type of caravan type crimes and the work that they do on the smash and grabs, we've worked with our agencies to find and identify who the specific players are, what type of vehicles they're using, and where in fact they're transporting those stolen goods. We've tracked some of those stolen goods as far away as Arizona and effected arrests for the individuals involved. So we have to work together as a region to make sure we know who the players are that are committing these crimes. We have to then go and apprehend them and try to recover the items of which they've stolen. We want to make sure that the people doing these crimes are held accountable for those crimes and are answered to that in the courts, and let the judges decide on their level of punishment for their acts.
Thank you. Ms. Walker?
Yes, $255 million, that fund from the Governor Newsom was great. I do know that we can't do anything. We're not going to be able to move forward. We're not going to be able to solve any problems unless we have some type of communication and relationship with the community. And it's got to be before things happen. Now we're behind because this has already happened. Everybody's talking about it, and people are now trying to figure out what they need to do. Yes, we need to share resources. That money needs to be used wisely. We need to still keep our hands right in the communities. And I'm talking about education in the elementary school, junior high schools, high schools. We need to be there. We need to talk. We need to listen. We need to hear what the kids are telling us. We need to talk with the business community. They have already spoken. They feel very afraid, and they want to ID these violators, and they want someone to be held accountable. So what does that mean? For law enforcement, it means that we're going to have to collaborate. We're going to have to come together, the DA, the sheriff's department, the police the department, and the public defender. Education is important, but also before someone is arrested, and then while they're in custody. Smash and grabs, of course, who they are, the vehicles, the transport of goods, the use of technology such as social media, so we can find out where these items are ending up. Are they for sale? Where are these people going? What are they doing? How can we apprehend them? And then how can we recover the property so that the business owners
30 seconds.
out loudly? So what am I saying in a nutshell is what I've been saying from the very beginning. We've got to talk to people. We've got to collaborate. We've got to figure out ways where we can solve these problems, but it's not going to be police only. It's going to be an entire community effort. That takes a relationship, and the sheriff's department can be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question will be directed to Mr. Ahern first. The unincorporated area of Alameda County is an urban area with over 140,000 people. They do not have a directly accountable city police force, so they depend on Alameda County Sheriff for local law enforcement. With this in mind, will you deploy deputies and staff directly in the unincorporated area than in those areas with a city police force? Can you explain your view of the Alameda County Sheriff Department's role in community policing?
Okay, double question. Community policing, we are one of the only law enforcement entities in the Alameda County that have continued on with our community policing unit. Others have reduced their services and have no longer employed those deputies to that. We also have the crime prevention unit. We are one of the only agencies that still continue on with crime prevention. And those entities and our agency try to go out and first prevent any type of criminal activity from occurring. As far as the unincorporated area that's serving the 140,000 people in the community, we have a full law enforcement entity at the Eden Township substation that works as a division for their own law enforcement. So they provide every law enforcement service that a city police department would do in the municipality. All of that has been done through the leadership of Commander Colby Steza, who acts as the chief of police for that entity. The other thing that I've done is I've expanded the Tri-Valley unit in the Livermore area to include traffic enforcement, driving under the influence enforcement, and patrol activities. We've reduced our times to respond to calls for service greatly by doing that. That station is located at the San Rita Jail, and the units are then deployed from that area. Their in-service activity
30 seconds.
covers the entire Tri-Valley, and they're very grateful for the service that they provide to our community out here in the Valley.
Thank you very much. Ms. Walker?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Yes. The unincorporated area of Alameda County is an urban area with over 140,000 people. They do not have a directly accountable city police force, so depend on Alameda County Sheriff for local law enforcement. With this in mind, will you deploy deputies and staff differently in the unincorporated area than in those areas with the city police force? Can you explain your view of the Alameda County Sheriff Department role in community policing?
Okay, yes, I will go just in the reverse order. Community-oriented policing is how we're going to develop trust with any community we're in, whether it is in an incorporated area or an unincorporated area. That is really the bed and breakfast of law enforcement, because ultimately we serve the public. We are public servants. So they have a right to say to us, we don't like the service that you're providing, or we do. The other thing is, the second point was, is there a difference between what the sheriff's office will do in an unincorporated area versus an incorporated area? The police handle the urban areas. We handle and are the police force for the unincorporated areas. So when deputies are out on patrol, they have to follow rules that are set up, that are constitutional when they come in contact with our community members. Whether the community member has committed a crime or not, there is still a manner in which we should go about doing police work. I am out there. I am doing it every single day. Community-oriented policing is how a little lady like me is able to do my job for 26 years without a partner. I have to know what is going on in my community, and I have to make sure that they understand what my function is and how I am there to keep the public safe. The last one
30
you
seconds.
was about the sheriff or, local law enforcement. When we put on the uniform, all of us are leaders. I don't have to be the sheriff in order for people to understand that I am there and I am an authority figure. But what I also want them to know is that I am here to serve you. I am here to help. So if it means that today I have to take someone from your family to jail because of something they did, it doesn't mean that I'm going to criminalize all of you. It means that there are resources that are available
Time.
so I can get you to help yourself and your family. So yes, that's the way I would handle the situation. And community-oriented policing is first and foremost before anything else in law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sanchez?
Yeah, so each city does have their own law enforcement agency. How they deploy their staff out on the street, it changes. It's fluid, right? It all depends on what crime is occurring where. And I believe that there are programs out there that allow for agencies to find out where the hotspots are, what type of crimes are occurring in certain areas, and then they deploy resources to those areas as needed. So the sheriff's office does have and should have a relationship with our cities to provide some resources when resources are needed. And for example, if we find, and we had experienced, the city of Oakland experienced a rather, it was a very targeted area where individuals were targeting our Asian community in Chinatown with violent attacks and robberies. And so the sheriff's office should be calling Oakland when these things are occurring to ask how we can help. I know that the CHP ended up assisting the city of Oakland with some added patrols of those areas, and it did seem to assist because sometimes visibility is what you need. Visibility is definitely a crime deterrent. So that's what we should be doing. And with respect to community policing too, we have a great program with respect to DSAL, the Deputy Sheriff's Activities Leagues, and our Youth and Family Services Bureau counselors that address youth and provide programs
30
for youth
seconds.
and mental health programs for youth. But those, and as well as Dig Deep Farms, those are great efforts that are being put on by our agency members. But we also would like to, and I would like to invite our cities to engage in conversations to potentially bring those services into their areas. I know that we have a focus, and our law enforcement services are focused on our unincorporated areas of Alameda County, but if we could spread the
Time.
wealth as far as being able to have people stand up their own farms, that would be an achievement.
Thank you very much. This will be our final question from our audience, and it will be directed to Ms. Walker. And it is, describe a situation during the performance of your job that you would handle differently if faced again.
Something that happened on my job that I would handle differently.
If faced again.
Well, I want to share with you that everything that I have done has been based on community-oriented policing. And so moving in my career, using that as the backstop of everything that I do has given me an opportunity to have a very, very positive relationship with members of the community. But if there was something that I would do differently, I had an experience about not too long ago where I had the camera, the body worn camera, but I didn't turn it on when I had an interaction with a person who was in the store and who was deemed as someone who was stealing from the store. So I didn't capture all of that information, or any of that information actually. So if I had it to do over again, I would have turned on my body worn camera before I entered the store. So that was something that is something that I would do differently if I was faced with that situation again. In terms of everything else that I've done in my career, it has been community-oriented policing has been the strategy that has gotten me through very, very sticky situations that other officers would have had a problem with. And one that I can share with you is two people were out. We got a call about them.
30 seconds.
A mentally ill person saw me, and the person decided she didn't want to be handcuffed. That mentally ill person got up, helped me with that individual until 5 other officers got there so we could apprehend her. When I went to tell her thank you, she said, they told me the next officer that came up, they were going to kill them. When I looked at you, I said, they're not going to kill this officer. That's my story.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez?
So no specific incident that I would not, or that I would do differently. However, I think throughout my career and as I moved up in my ranks, I should have pushed a little harder when I disagreed with decisions that were being made. And I should have vocalized myself and been more of a thorn, I guess you should say, as I was moving up in ranks. And that's something that I wish I would have done differently, to bring more of a voice to our agency members. And that is something that I definitely will encompass and do moving forward, listening to our agency members and taking their input, and really making sure that decisions that I make are inclusive of them as well as our community members. So that is something that definitely is something I wish I could have gone back and been a little bit more vocal.
Thank you. Mr. Ahern?
Yeah, so I've been in law enforcement now for going on 42 years. I started in 1980, and I'm very proud of my accomplishments and the things that I've done each and every day, as I wore a badge on my chest and a patch on my arm. And so the one element that I wish I could have been more effective on is demanding more funding for our staff. Back in the years of 2008, 2009, 2010, as Sheriff Alameda County was going through some very huge budget reduction programs. And we worked with the county trying to take our part of the sheriff's office and reduce our budget to fit within the county guidelines. I wish at that time I continued to fight to make sure we had the staffing and the budget that we needed to be effective. And now we see the outcome of the lack of funding that we've had. I professed for over a decade that Alameda County Sheriff's Office has been understaffed and underfunded. We see that understaffing has cost us litigation at San Bernardino Jail. Both the plaintiff's attorneys, our attorneys, and independent staff that have come in and inspected the jail and audited us agreed with me that we are understaffed. We're now taking strides to fund those positions. We're working with the county administrator to do the hiring on a gradual process.
30 seconds.
So that process doesn't destroy the funding that is needed in other areas of Alameda County. So we're working hard to make sure we get fully staffed and fully funded within the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to turn it over to Helen for the closing remarks.
Hello, everyone. All right, so Ms. Sanchez, 2 minutes for everyone's closing remarks. Ms. Sanchez. Ms. Sanchez, can you start with your closing remarks?
Oh, sorry. I apologize for that. So first off, I want to thank the group again for allowing for this forum. I said earlier that I needed more of a voice. And so I hear, and I hope you hear my voice now, because you will continue to hear it. On my drive and running for sheriff is to provide a fair, equitable level of service to the community. And as sheriff, I'm committed to establishing strong collaborative relationships with our community, our city and justice partners, working with our cities and county partners to pull together a team effort in addressing the wave of gun violence that we are all being impacted by, ceasing communication with ICE unless there is a criminal warrant signed by a magistrate, reviewing and making changes to our current internal affairs process to ensure a fair process, and reviewing current hiring practices to ensure that we are identifying and attracting a diverse representation of our community. I want to reshape, and I am working on reshaping our jail by providing our incarcerated with an access to a higher level of education, life skills, and employment services that are more robust. I will open up the books on our budget to show that we are being fiscally responsible. I want to point out that this is not a decision that was very easy for me to make. This is an enormous risk as an internal candidate running against an incumbent who has never been opposed. This is a massive effort. It will require your support. And I ask you to join me in bringing change to the office. I have taken this risk for the Alameda County residents. I have heard your concerns, and I have answered your call for change. I am asking you to
30
stay with
seconds.
me. Together we can do this. And I ask you to keep this momentum going. I've earned the endorsements of Berkeley Mayor Adeguin, Berkeley Councilmember Taplin, Oakland Councilmember Gallo, Oakland Councilmember Kalb, Hayward Councilman Zermenio, and most recently, of course, Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf. If you want to continue to see the status quo, vote for the status quo. If you want to see a stronger, collaborative Alameda County, vote for me. And I ask you to check out my website at sanchezforsheriff.com. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ahern.
Well, thank you very much. I too want to thank you for the opportunity. As you can see, I'm very passionate about what I do, and I try to make a difference and a change each and every day I go to work. I want to work to change the lives in a positive direction for members of the community, my staff, and those people in our custody. Since 2007, I've preached the guardian principle of law enforcement, and I believe that we as law enforcement are caretakers in our community. I believe that we must be compassionate and understanding in our approach to crime, poverty, mental health, and homelessness, as long as addiction. Under my leadership, we've developed a number of programs and services to allow individuals options for those faced with those difficult times in their lives. However, for public safety and to mitigate criminal activity, I also believe that those who do evil and violent acts in our community need to be held accountable. There's no place for violence or crimes against women, children, and the most vulnerable people in our community. I believe in equality and diversity for criminal justice system, and that's fair for all. I do not only preach this, I practice this, and I've proven a track record of success in our most challenged communities. Now is the time to continue on with the proven concepts of prevention, enforcement, programs, and services. This is my vision for safer communities that had proven crime prevention techniques which partner with fair law enforcement and investing in our communities. We need to continue to look at proven evidence-based reforms
Seconds.
to promote community trust, transparency, accountability, and fairness to all. I currently manage a $523 million budget, of which we've now been able to exceed $160 million in revenue to cut the net county costs. I'm committed to meeting the federal oversight at San Rita Jail and look forward to working with the Sheriff's Oversight Committee in hopes to further improve our outstanding work we do for this agency. To validate my work, we have now 7 accreditations that
Time.
include law enforcement services and the other elements of our agency. So please, if you have time, visit ahernforsheriff.com. I hope to get your support and we make sure we have a great future in the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Walker.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, we cannot see you.
Okay, let me see if I can change this.
There
Can
go.
you see me now?
Yep.
Okay. I want to thank every organization who partnered with you to do this and to bring all of the candidates to this one point in time where you can listen to what we have to say. I am honored really to be here. I want you to know that one of the things that some of the things that I plan to do are to bring balanced leadership and legitimacy to the position of the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, to protect immigrant communities, to improve inmate services at Santa Rita Jail, to establish working relationships with leaders and identify segments of the community, because it is the community who supports us that helps us to do our job better, to apply 21st century policing strategies to reduce inmate fatalities, to establish systems that promote diversity at all levels of the Sheriff's Department, Improve training regarding use of force in mentally ill or emotionally disturbed populations, and to invest in technologies that improve operational capability and effectiveness. I hear a lot of people who use the word, we want diversity, we want to change things. But my real personal feeling is that if you're already doing it, you don't have to use those words, because all I have to do is look around. And if I don't see anyone who looks like me or who looks different from me, then you're not talking about true diversity. You're talking about what makes you feel comfortable. It takes all of us to make this
30
happen.
seconds.
It takes all of us to ensure public safety. And sometimes a person who has a different opinion than I do may be the best person to go to with some of the possibilities for change in the future. If you want true change, you need to vote for Joanne Walker. My website is Joanne Walker, the number 4, the word sheriff.com. It's Joanne Walker, the number 4, the word sheriff.com. If you want things to remain the same, you now have a choice, because this is the first time in 35 years that the residents of Alameda County actually get an opportunity to choose the sheriff or the person they want to represent them as the sheriff. And again, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Thank you all for attending. If you want more information on how to find the video of this, you can see it in the chat. Also, the address for our DA forum that we had in November. We hope you leave with a greater appreciation of the responsibilities of the Alameda County Sheriff and more information about each candidate. We would especially like to thank the candidates for their participation. Hope to see you, most of you, in our February general meeting. Take care out there, be safe, and thank you very much for participating.
All right, thank you very much.
You're very
Appreciate the
welcome.
time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.